And joining us live in studio, Matakanya, General Secretary of the National Association of School Governing Bodies. Steve Mabona is the Gauteng Education spokesperson. Musiritsiane is the South African Liberty Foundation chair. And we have Opa Fumba, Right to Know campaign coordinator. And via Skype, we have Andre Gum, who is from the South African Human Rights Commission as a commissioner there. Good evening to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us. You at home, you're welcome to give us a ring on our landline, 011-542-2186, and engage with us. So let's start with the education policy and the Act. Remabona, if you'll just expand what it says with regards to the appointment of principals. Is it something that is open to public scrutiny, or is it something that the department and SGBs decides on?
Thank you very much. The policy is very clear. The SGBs have a role to play in the process of interviewing candidates, because the panel, you will have SGB members, you will have officials from the department. They will go through that process of interviewing and then recommend to the head office via district. The district will then peruse documentation and then forward the documentation to head office for HOD's approval. So that's how the process will then unfold. The recommendation will then be acceded to by the HOD, and then the appointment will be. So
at which point then, Matakanya, does the community have a sense or a right to, in this case, reject a black principal being appointed at Klipstreet West Secondary?
Thank you, Cindy, once again. And greetings to all South Africans. There are two things at play, Cindy. One is the question of racism, and the other one is the process as it has been outlined. And maybe we are just to have to set the record straight. As National Association of School Governing Bodies, we condemn in strongest terms any act of race.
I beg your pardon, Matakanya. I believe there's something wrong with your mic. We'll get a sound engineers to sort that out. Just posing that question to you as well, because clearly there's a legitimacy. We know that the PPP, or rather public-private partnerships, is something that is encouraged for parents to get involved in their children's schooling. And in this case, they are now showing their discontent with the principal. Is that part of the discourse that you had anticipated, or that even has a room to be entertained?
Look, let's start there. The SGB represent the parents. SGB represents the community. Hence, we will encourage members of the community, when they elect the SGBs, they need to make sure that they have people who have an interest of a learner in the SGB, because they will take decisions on their behalf. They need to be mindful of that. Hence, we won't have the entire community going back and being part of the process. By the fact that the SGB members are there in that panel, they represent the community. So a decision that will be taken there, it will be difficult to be rescinded in the fact that the issue of the racism, probably people saying they need a certain race. I mean, if a professional qualifies to be in a position, it will be very difficult for the MEC to say, we are looking at solely a race of that individual and then rescind, because the very same panelists who were there, who took that decision, they are now saying we want the decision to be rescinded.
But my point is the rationality. Does the action of the coloured community or the parents at Klipstreet West Secondary who protested against the appointment of a black principal, does this meet the test of rationality, considering there are processes and structures to ensure that there's adequate representation and hearing other people's perspective as well?
One cannot support the call made by the community in that area. What is obvious clear is that South Africans separated in color, and we want to make sure that that separation that was manifested by the apartheid regime continues even today. And you can't have rationality in the thinking that says that we don't want a specific individual because of their color, because they are black, therefore they do not qualify
to participate or be a principal. They will not be a better principal for our children. They will not even understand the culture, nor understand us as a community. It has nothing to do with that. It's about time that we change perspective, that we change our mindset, that we learn to live together. I think it's about that time now that people must learn to live together and accept that there are other human beings, despite the fact that they're of different color, but they themselves are of a race of a human being. Now, the history that we have in South Africa is that we have, of apartheid, is that you would have the first grade citizen. In these instances in the apartheid gave the impression that the first grade citizens were white, second grade citizens were Indian, the third grade citizens were colored, and the rest of them all are blacks. Now, that mindset is still there. People still believe that this race, a particular black, are of a fourth race, of a fourth grade, and they do not qualify to be a better teacher. That mindset has to change. There's no way in which you can compare even this to the other school where they have a problem with the hair. You can surely see that instead of teaching children, you are interested in their hairstyle.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
All right, so let's also go to our guest, the South African Human Rights Commission Commissioner, Mr. Andre Golf. And I have to apologize to Rema Takanye. We're still sorting out your microphone. Good evening to you, Mr. Golf. And just in terms of the preamble of what we, not only the Freedom Charter, our Constitution, the non-racism, non-sexism, the Rainbow Nation kind of euphoria that we had, we're seeing it playing out in schools where a colored community rejects a black principal. Why do you think this the community feels a sense of entitlement to have a colored principal in the school?
Yes, one of the SGB, the school governing body members, was even quoted to say that we are colored community, so therefore we should have a colored principal. Now, these kinds of utterances and the alleged actions that took place here are absolutely unacceptable in the open and democratic society we are trying to be, but that we are supposed to be in terms of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. That is the one issue. And the other one, I think, is that whilst we as the Human Rights Commission obviously support protest action that is conducted in a peaceful manner, in this case, unfortunately, the protest action resulted once again in learners from being barred of attending school, and that is the other very unacceptable matter at hand here. We cannot have situations like we've had in Buwani and so on, where the protest action of people are being used to get the attention of government, or whoever the case may be, and in the process, they are barring learners from attending schools. I think our schools need to really be the institutions where people are brought together, where they learn to live and work together, and therefore it is obviously completely unacceptable to have, on the one hand, protest action on the basis of race taking place, and then also that protest action barring learners, in effect, from attending schools. The Human Rights Commission has seen many other matters of this nature and complaints in that regard coming to our attention. In many instances, infrastructure of schools are destroyed. We've also had hearings and compiled a report on the negative effects of some of these protest action on education. And whilst protest action, if it is peaceful, is a right of people to voice their concerns, and we will fight for that right. On the other hand, it should not become something that impacts negatively on other rights, in this case, the right to basic education of learners.
Just stay on the line first. Thank you so much. Our first caller, Joy, good evening to you, and Abraham in Cape Town, we see you. Good evening, Joy.
Yes, Cindy, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
I'm okay. Cindy, you know what? I'm phoning from Klerksdorp.
Yeah,
you know what happens? I see this as a reverse of apartheid of some sort. Because why? Like in one of your guests, Moanta Buakuring, this thing is like we are the last, nation ever. Even colored communities could just see us as none or less human, That's how we were rated, and before, during apartheid. We don't qualify for any better life whatsoever. Even in our communities, we can see where we're staying, the education that these things that we deserve to get. Everything about black people, it's so
substandard,
so less. That's how all these nations in this country of ours regard a black human being. So really, it's totally uncalled for. It's time that human rights should prevail wherever there is a human being, regardless of her color or whatsoever.
Yeah,
really,
just in the interest of time, Joy, thank you so much. We appreciate your call, saying that the reconciliation process hasn't really been effective in the sense that black people primarily are still marginalized in the spatial areas we live and access to amenities. Abraham in Cape Town, good evening to you. Abraham. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
We're listening.
Can I come in?
Yes, sir.
No, I think the issue of racial on language and the color is quite clear on our constitution is there, but then it's very beautiful in the constitution. But its practicalities in terms of equal opportunities is still a problem in South Africa. As much as we have a beautiful constitution that says that, but in terms of reality, really, I concur with other colleagues say that the Truth Commission that we had in 96, 97, he has failed us because he has not triggered down to having an individual or a public debate about the race and the color and the language and equal opportunities. I think that is still a gap, still a challenge for everyone, even the South Africans themselves, even the white South African, the German South African, the Eurocentrics that have become citizens. I mean, it's the issue of equal opportunities. Look at the issue of education itself, the system itself, how it's designed. And even for these 21 years, I mean, it's still a fragile for us to wish that everything was just going to be like balanced as it's supposed to be.
Abraham, we get your point. Thank you so much, sir. We also have Opa Fumba from Right to Know. He's the campaign coordinator. Mr. Fumba, good evening to you and thanks for joining us. Do you think that, it's about time that we candidly and frankly spoke about issues of race in this country without it seeming as if we're trying to be divisive or trying to take us back in history? Hi, Mr. Fumba. All right, I'll give that to Mr. Matakanya.
Hello.
I hope. Oh, there you are. Can you hear us? Okay, Mr. Matakanya, finally, I think second time lucky. We hope your audio is okay now. Is this an opportunity that once and for all we deal with the racial or the polarized nature of our society and deal with the hurt and the brutality of our past to move forward?
Yeah, I think one will just harp on what my fellow brothers here have already said, because earlier on I indicated that there are two things at play. One is a question of racism, and two is a question of process. Then on the question of racism, as an organization, we want to put a record straight that we condemn that type of behavior. That is related to race, that is related to undermining other race. Because I mean, even if the process has not gone the way they expected it to have conducted, you couldn't just publicly stand up and say we don't want a black principal. That statement itself is a racist statement. So we want to condemn that. However, then we want to also encourage the Department of Education to say, we together with them observe the process of appointing principals in schools, because there are those areas where you will find that now the process has not been properly monitored, has not been conducted, and it creates conflict.
All right, let's take policy and process and whether there is a disjoint and they're not aligned, especially when it comes to the issue of Pretoria Secondary, about the afro and how black girls wear their hair. It's something that's documented well in history, that if you find yourself in an environment where you are the minority, you will then take the prescription from that particular school. But here, clearly, at Windsor Academy, it's predominantly black children who wear their hair as African children would, and it seems to be a problem. Mr. Mabona, is it policy? Is it process? Is it discrimination? Is it just not applying all of those structures properly?
Look, we have agreed with the school that we need to review the code of conduct. You understand that each and every school has a code of conduct which learners and the management must adhere to. So we agreed today that, look, there's an issue with the consistency, the way the code of conduct is applied. We read it, and when we were listening to learners' complaints, it was very clear that the application thereof of the very same code of conduct is not consistent. Hence, there was a decision that we need to suspend the code of conduct for 3 months, go review the representation of learners, the management sit and review and have a new code of conduct that will be conducive for learning. That's what is important, without focusing on what the learners will be looking like or looking like. So the focus should be on teaching and making sure that there is an emphasis on discipline, protection, and on how the learners will be conducting themselves while they're
But how are you ill-disciplined if you wear your hair in the most natural form, dreadlocks, in an afro, in braids, cornrows? How is that a form of ill-discipline in your view? How else are black kids supposed to, girls primarily, wear their hair?
No, look, like as I said, there's a consensus which was reached that the application of that code of conduct, there's a discrepancy thereof. Hence, there was an agreement that we need to go back, review, have an input from learners on how we want to implement that. School management also review, and then come present a code of conduct that will be acceptable to all parties, including the parents. So we'll be monitoring the situation, because there is a concession of some sort that probably you need to learn. I mean, the school principal put an emphasis that probably we're learning every day. So, and there was no hostility coming from the school.
That's what, a good sign. Yeah.
That's what
Sorry, Mr.
made us very
Mabona,
happy.
but our callers have been very patient. Solly in Brits and Mose in Durban. Good evening to you, Solly.
Hello, Cindy. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, sir?
Let me say hi to your panel there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Look, Cindy, you see, this thing of racism is a thorn in the flesh of Africans. Look what happened. This thing started when it started from Pretoria Girls High. On issues, petty issues that were brought up by these other races that are seeing black as an object. But Cindy, you see, we are dealing here with symptoms. We are not dealing with the root cause. In 23 years of democracy, we're still experiencing these things of racism. And now, let me tell you, as long as we still have areas like your Aranya, your Ward, where there's only white people and whatever, this thing will never.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Solly, we're seriously out of time, but point well taken. And we have Opa Fumba, right, campaign coordinator. You are of that view that indeed the black child, or the rights of the black child, has been denied, as the previous caller said.
I think for me, I concur with other comrades what they are raising. I mean, it's quite fragile at this stage of 21 years. I repeat what I said, that we need to be clear on these things, comrades. Like, we need the basics. We need to also have the information trickled down where the marginalized are able to engage. If we look at in the context of the developers, property developers, when they design geographically, they don't integrate people themselves. There's exclusion into that. Who have money, who's wealthy, who belong to who have equal opportunities. It's always outrage. The racism is not about a human being in my context. The racism is about the socio-economics distance in between. Look at the minerals of South Africa itself. Had been fixed price by $1 versus rand. And then what is going to telling you.
Yeah, Mr.
And then
Fumba,
if
I'm
you
sorry.
can
Yeah,
go back
I understand
on
that it's much
any
more
level, sorry, I know,
deep-rooted.
no.
Yeah, all right. I'm sorry, we're really out of time. Muzi, in Durban, you are last caller on this. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Cindy, and good evening to your panel as well.
Good evening.
What's your question or comment, sir?
My comment, Cindy, mhlambe ngizobeka ngesizulu nkosazana. Yabona into eyenzakalayo la eSouth Africa. Yabona lento eyenzakalayo ezikoleni is not ukuthi into eyenzeka by mistake. These things are done deliberately, and there are people who behind these things. Maybe you will think that because it's just a school, then it is just few parents who are doing these things. There are machinery behind all these things to divert our minds from what is exactly happening. People like Save SA and those people who talk about Jacob Zuma this, Jacob Zuma that, they will not say anything about this. Right now, we're having an issue of ANN7 that need to be disbanded, and they're not saying anything about ENCA. All those people, they are the machinery to divert our minds from the real issue. The real issue is black people life is under zero.
All right, Muzi, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let you go into our panelists as well. I must apologize in that we didn't have adequate time. But nonetheless, the debate continues on social media, and I do thank you for making the effort to be here this evening. We take a quick ad break. Do stay with ANN7 Prime. We'll be back after this.